UFC Noche, Lopes versus Silva takes place this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main events, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card, starting with the early prelim opener of Rodrigo Sezinando versus Danill Donchenko. As you can see, we've got two of Sudan's best up-and-coming prospects. I'm joking. They just haven't done the pictures for them on the UFC website. It's only $1 billion company, guys, who just signed a $7.7 billion deal over the next 7 years. You can't expect them to have pictures of the people that have been on The Ultimate Fighter for the past however many months. Of course they'll just do this. I'm going with Danill. I'm going to go with Danill Donchenko. I was worried watching the season that Rodrigo Sezinando was going to win the whole thing. And the reason why I was worried about that is because he was the most dull out of everyone pretty much in his division. There was a guy from the Fighting Nerds that was on there that was pretty cool. There's Danill, who's really cool as well. There's some other guys with some interesting fight styles. He tries to stall out the fight. He tries to wrestle. In his fight against Creighton in his last fight, I thought he lost. I thought that guy, was tricky, got back up when he needed to, and I thought he outdid him on the feet and did a little bit more damage in that fight. It still was a very close fight, but I thought that, Creighton did some things in that contest that Danill can 100% capitalize on, because for Danill, he's just blown through everyone on tough. He goes straight through them. They can't seem to back him up. They can't seem to get respect from him whatsoever. Maybe we're going to have some moment here where he has some glaring weakness in his grappling, but I don't see it. Minus 238 favorite for Danill. I agree with the odds after their last performances on The Ultimate Fighter. So I'm going to go with Danill. He is crazy good conditioning, really tough, really powerful, high volume, not scared of anything. I like Danill. He's a bit like a Yuri Prohaska at welterweight, but I don't know. He probably fights on the inside a little. Like, he's really, really devastating on the inside, and I think that's what he's going to need here. Whereas Yuri's sometimes at range with his front kicks and stuff like that. Danill is all hooks and combinations on the inside, and I think that's going to help him, because in this fight with Rodrigo, there's going to be moments where Rodrigo is trying to push him up against the cage and is trying to get a takedown on him. So I think if he can separate from there and then go to work, that's where Danill's going to thrive. So I'm going to say round 2, TKO for Danill Donchenko, getting this one done in a second round by finish. That's what I'm going to take here. We move on. Before we get to the next fight, this video is sponsored by prizepicks.com. New users play $5 and get $50 instantly in lineups. New users, that is, if they use code GURU, which is a very important part. You have to use code GURU when you're signing up. This is what I'm going to do this week. I'm going to take Quang Lee to land less than 37.5 significant strikes against his opponent, Santiago Luna. I'm also going to take Sedriques Dumas to land more than 15.5 significant strikes against Zachary Reese. I'm also going to take Jared Gordon to land more than 60.5 significant strikes against Garcia. I think this is a decent one this week, but yes, use code GURU and get $50 in lineups from your first $5 deposit. We get back to the breakdown and move on up the card. Montserrat Rendon versus Alice Pereira. This isn't Pereira's sister. A lot of people thought it was. They share a name. It's not his sister. This is someone different. It'd be hard to know if you were just on the UFC website, because they've got her as an 0-0, no face, no person fighter that's in the UFC. But she's a slight favorite for a reason. She is pretty good. She's 19 years old, which is very young, and it does reek of a bit of a worrying moment here. But I think she's all right. And you have to take it with a pinch of salt, because you can look at women's MMA prospects and think this is dog shit. But then you've got to look at it through the lens of, I'm watching a women's MMA fight. You know what I mean? Which is very risky. Sometimes I do that with middleweights, where I see a middleweight coming up like Anthony Hernandez. And I'm like, this guy's fucking dog shit. And I'm like, oh, wait, it's middleweight. Reina Dorita comes up. I'm like, what the fuck is he doing? He's going to lose. Oh, wait, it's middleweight. I did the same thing for Sedriques at first. Certain divisions you can get by, and women's divisions are one of them. So I'm not going to hold Alice Pereira looking a bit iffy against some opponents. It is worrying, but what has Montserrat Rendon really done? If this was a more established women's bantamweight, I'd maybe feel a different type of way about this. If this was someone who was somewhat deep, like if this was Carol Rosa, versus Alice Pereira in her debut, I'm going with Carol Rosa. She's probably going to fraud check her. But Montserrat Rendon, I don't know. The Lesniakova, the Iron Lady, just beat her up across the distance. She's kind of good at grappling. She'll maybe get a takedown per round, but doesn't really dominate with it. So it's just really hard to pick Montserrat Rendon here. Normally, I do like fading women's MMA prospects because we've had, Yasmin Uregui and a ton of other up-and-coming women's MMA prospects that just sort of get dealt with by any capable level of fighter. But I'm going to trust in Alice Pereira. She's got some pretty decent TKOs. She's got power to finish in women's MMA on the feet, which I think is very impressive. And, it does make you stand out a little bit. And she has got some consistent finishes. I didn't like her last performance at all. She fought like a really weak 12-7 opponent. Which, to be honest with you, if that was a men's fighter, I'd say that's a terrible opponent she fought. What are they doing 12-7? But in women's MMA, when you're 12-7, that's experience, at least. Most of the regional fights they have, they're against people that are 1-0 or 2-1 or 3-1, and they might look like a better record. At least I know that the person that she fought has been training for an extended period of time. So I don't mind it, even though she fought a woman with an ugly record. She won the fight. She got scrappy in moments. She mixed in takedowns. She did nothing with them, but she at least showed that this is getting a bit tricky. I'll mix in takedowns. And she won the fight from it, so I'm going to go with Alice Pereira. She seems pretty well-rounded. I don't know why I'm spending so much time on this, but I'm going to go with Alice Pereira getting this one done as a slight favorite. We move on. Alessandro Costa versus Alden Coria. Another guy who has not had history in the UFC has taken this fight on short notice. Alessandro Costa at one point was supposed to fight someone else. I can't remember who it was, but he was supposed to fight someone else on this card. And it ended up falling through. And he stayed on the card. Alden Coria got a call up. I mean, the last fight he had, I think, was in March or April of this year. He fought a bum, knocked him out in the second round. I mean, this guy shouldn't be in the UFC. He's not made it through the Contender Series. He's not made it as a prospect on the regional scene. There's a reason Costa's nearly a minus 500 favorite here. Costa's fought some good fighters, He lost to Amir Albazi, but Amir Albazi's the top flyweight contender. So, it's a thing. You can lose to Amir Albazi. You can lose to Steve Erceg and have a decent scrap with him as well, by the way. So Alessandro Costa's got experience against good level opponents, and he's won some fights in the UFC. And from what I've seen of him in the UFC, he's pretty explosive, pretty dangerous. He's going to be the shorter fighter here with an equal reach. I could see that being a bit of a problem. I wouldn't want, if I had a flyweight making their debut on short notice like Alden Coria is going to do here, who I don't think is top level, hasn't really beaten anyone of note whatsoever. If I see that, I don't want him taking on a guy like Alessandro Costa, who's a powerful, stocky opponent, explosive, going to start fast. I think it's a bit of a nightmare of a debut, so I'm going to go with Alessandro Costa. And I agree with the odds having him so much of a favorite because Alden Coria, he could pull off an upset here, but he is fucking trash. So if he pulls it off, 1 in 10 chance, he pulls it off, but I doubt it. We move on. Zachary Reese versus Sedriques Dumas. Joe Pyfer, you ain't slick, dude. You know what I mean? This is body cam off Pyfer version going after Sedriques Dumas, the felon of the UFC. Basically, is what he's. I saw some article going around about how he didn't have any money left in his account and he doesn't get paid enough, ignoring the so many court cases and this and that and arrests that he's had going on. So, Boot Gang is, he's paving the way, Sedriques Dumas, but I think he's going to pave his way out of the UFC. I don't think he beats Zachary Reese. I don't think it's going to be an immediate destruction, which can happen in Zachary Reese fights. Either he gets finished or his opponent gets finished. There's only one person who survived a beating off of him, and we'll get to him later on in the card because he's on the main card for some reason. But Sedriques Dumas, I think he's going to get finished here. Zachary Reese has really good kicks at range. I can see body kicks hurting Sedriques Dumas here. I don't know why, but the way he stands and his stance, long torso, soft body, I reckon I can see Zachary Reese chewing him up with body kicks. He landed a bunch of them on Jose Medina, who we'll get to, who's way above this guy on the card, by the way. Don't know why. But Zachary Reese, I reckon, will get this one done. His kicks, power. I think he'll have Sedriques Dumas on the back foot. I don't see Sedriques having the ability to sting Zachary with something he hasn't seen coming. And I think if they grapple, I think it's pretty even as well. So, yeah, I'm going to go against Sedriques Dumas. I think they're going to last a little bit into the fight where maybe this will happen at the end of the first round or in the second round at some point. But Zachary Reese is just too athletic, better trained. I don't see Sedriques Dumas winning this fight. And also, Sedriques, you can't say that he is committed to his fight career based on all the stuff that's going on outside the scenes. He's got a job in the UFC. He's in the UFC. He has ability to make a 50K bonus in one night. He's got he's got a new contract signed for him. Even though he's a loser and he loses a lot of his fights, they keep giving him extra opportunities. But he don't have the brain to adjust and realize the position he's in. So he keeps fucking up outside the UFC. So I'm going to have to go with Zachary Reese. I can't trust the undiscipline of Sedriques Dumas whatsoever. We move on. Jesus Aguilar versus Luis Gurule. Now, this guy has Guru in his name, so I'm tempted. But I think I'm going to go with the underdog here of Jesus Aguilar. They've got Luis Gurule as a 2-1 favorite over Jesus Aguilar. And Luis Gurule has yet to beat someone in the UFC. He fought Piccanini, who is 7-0 on the Contender Series. He got taken down a bunch, but he landed some good strikes in the fight and kept it standing where he could and stuffed the takedowns. And, you know, the guy kept taking him down, but Gurule kept getting back up. And he landed better shots on the feet throughout the fight. But Jesus Aguilar's been in the UFC for some time now. And he's a stocky, dangerous, kind of powerful dude who has people in a lot of trouble. You know, he lost to Tatsuro Taira. I don't think that's that bad. I don't think a loss to Tatsuro Taira is that bad in a division. And he's had some other losses against some other decent opponents at flyweight as well. But, you know, people forget, man. Look what he did to Shannon Ross. Slept him out cold round one. What I'm saying is, though, Jesus Aguilar's pretty tricky. I know he lost to Rafael Estevam. Got taken down in moments there. I don't see Gurule running a takedown clinic on him. Gurule's coming off a KO loss in his debut, by the way, against Ode Osborne. He had a decent first round where he got a takedown. Not much else really happened in that round. Other than that, he got slept in round 2. Nasty KO, by the way. But for Jesus Aguilar, I've seen more ability from him across the distance in fights where he's nearly had people in tricky situations. You know, he's a tricky guy to beat. Even for Tatsuro Taira, I think I remember this correctly. I believe he actually had Taira in some awkward positions with a guillotine and stuff like that, eventually getting submitted himself. But he's shown some ability, Aguilar. And Gurule hasn't proven that to me yet. So for him to be a minus 200 favorite, I disagree. I big time disagree with this. I'm going to go with Jesus Aguilar to get this one done by decision or a finish. I'm not sure how, but I reckon Aguilar might pull this one off. He's a good underdog here. We move on. Tatiana Suarez versus Amanda Lemos. Wow. Yeah, I'm going to go with Tatiana Suarez. Amanda Lemos did get out grappled in her last fight, and it was a pretty uneventful fight. And it's happened a few times to her now where she has ended up on bottom and been lost, you know, against Weili Zhang. She was lost on the ground against Weili Zhang, completely lost. So was Tatiana Suarez in a way, or at least she couldn't get takedowns on Zhang Weili whatsoever. So must be all that US wrestling credentials that she's got. Oh, sorry. Caught myself bullshitting about US wrestling credentials. I'm allergic. But either way, Tatiana Suarez should win this fight. She should have the grappling to do it. She could get chinned by Amanda Lemos. She could get guillotined by Amanda Lemos. But the fact that Lemos even goes for big power swings and also goes for guillotines and chokes off of people shooting takedowns on her, I think that's actually going to help Tatiana Suarez get her takedowns. You know, Zhang Weili's a little bit more composed. She'll throw like a lead side kick. Things that aren't going to get you in trouble if you fail it when it comes to people getting onto you. A lead leg side kick can get you in trouble, but you know what I mean. Not simple shit that's going to get you in trouble. You're winging overhands like Amanda Lemos or swinging with all your might trying to catch someone by KO and you don't quite land it. Uppercuts, rear bolo uppercuts from Lemos. Jumping, arming guillotines, jumping all kinds of chokes off the front. So I'm going to have to go with Tatiana Suarez. I think Lemos' style of fighting and the way that she looks for finishes will leave her more open to the grappling of Suarez. So I'm going to say that Suarez wins this fight. Second or third round, ground and pound TKO. I could even see a crucifix position finish where she shows Chimaev how it's done and how to really wind up on shots. So I'm going to go with Tatiana Suarez getting this one done. We move on. Claudio Puelles versus Joaquim Silva. I can't pick Claudio Puelles to win a fight. Can't do it. He is all right. Can't do it, though. I'm going to go with Joaquim Silva. Joaquim Silva's pretty decent. He's a strong tank of a guy for the division. Very powerful on the feet, which I think is going to be a big factor here. Sometimes I get him mixed up with Christos Giagos. But it happens. You know what I mean? Sometimes there's two guys in the division you permanently mix up. But Joaquim Silva's very powerful, very explosive. Can be chinned. Has had some stinky moments in fights where he should have beaten the guy that he fought. But you know what? I ain't picking no jiu-jitsu fucking bitch that rolls for legs, bottom position, merchant, ever. I ain't doing it. So I'm going against Claudio Puelles. I think he's bitch made. I think he's a martial artist, not a fighter. And Joaquim Silva has wobbled Arman Tsarukyan badly, out of control, and barely fumbled a finish on him and gave him problems when it came to stuffing takedowns, and even had like people in really tricky guillotine attempts and stuff like that. So if he pulls a guillotine, ends up on bottom position against Puelles, he's going to be in trouble. But I don't know if Puelles is all that. You know, even the fight with Jordan Levitt. I know Jordan Levitt can grapple, but we saw Chase Hooper just sort of wrangle up Jordan Levitt. Whereas Puelles and Levitt went back and forth in their fight. So I'm going to go against Claudio Puelles, man. The way he fought against Dan Hooker when he couldn't get it, the leg lock that he wanted, and he just kind of quit. You aren't a fighter, man. You're a jiu-jitsu bitch. Go roll around in your little gear, you fucking... Oh, either way. Let's not say slurs here. Joaquim Silva gets this one done as a slight underdog. I'm going to go with Joaquim Silva. I don't trust no BJJ guys, man. Not in MMA. Not purists like that. It just ain't going to work, bro. You're going to get smashed. So I'm going to go with Joaquim Silva getting this one done. We move on. On the main card. No, this is the prelims. Thank God. Jose Daniel Medina versus Dusko Todorovic. Now, I'm about to read you a stat line you probably never thought you'd ever see again. Okay? Are you ready? Brace yourselves, because if you're a real UFC fan, you know exactly what I'm going to get at here. It is 2025. Dusko Todorovic has been given an opponent in the UFC, and he is a minus 325 favorite. 2025, Dusko Todorovic, in the UFC still, facing a UFC fighter, he's a minus 325 favorite. If that don't tell you Dusko's going to win, I don't know what does. There was a time when Jose Medina was tough enough to give some problems to guys on the regional scene that couldn't really finish him all that much, but this is a Dusko win. Jose Medina has no power, no athletic ability, no grappling, no jiu-jitsu game. He's just a flabby, big, like Latin guy. So they put them in the UFC. It's kind of what they do. We get this every now and then with an Ike Villanueva or there was another big fat cunt in the UFC at one point. I can't remember his name, but we get this a lot. Jose Medina. People are screaming names at me of like former flabby Mexicans in the higher weight classes, but I can't remember the name of them all. But we do get this quite a bit where there's just a flabby guy that can't be finished. And then he ends up sticking around in the UFC because he has fun fights where he's on the receiving end of a beating, or whether he catches someone after they gas out and it's an all-out war. But I'm going to go with Dusko Todorovic. He is a better, well-rounded martial artist than Jose Medina. He's not as tough, I guess. He's a little bit more chinny, but I don't think Medina's got that crazy of power. Why the fuck is Jose Medina in the UFC? He lost on the Contender Series, got fucked up for 3 rounds by Zachary Reese and lost again. Why is he in the UFC? Oh, he got knocked out by Ateba Gutierrez after the fucking beatdown against Zachary Reese. He has had a lot of cage time now to prove something of worth. He didn't even win on the Contender Series. Man, why are these... I mean, I get this Noche and you want to, you know, he's from Bolivia and I don't know if there's any other fighters from Bolivia, but fucking hell, man. Jesus Christ. What is this? Yeah, I mean, this guy's not earned shit to get into the UFC. Fair play, Dusko should be cut as well, but I'm going to go with Dusko. He's more well-rounded and a better fighter than Jose Medina by far. So I'm going to go with Dusko Todorovic getting this one done. We move on. Alexander Hernandez versus Diego Ferreira. Go on, Hernandez. Quick turnaround, quick paycheck. Just got a win over Chase Hooper. Wants to get right back in there against Carlos Diego Ferreira. It's going to fucking backfire. You're losing to Carlos Diego Ferreira. Did you guys think for a second I was going to let them give me Carlos Diego Ferreira as an underdog against Alexander Hernandez and not take it? Carlos Diego Ferreira is going to beat Alexander Hernandez. He's fought great opponents, Diego Ferreira. And I'll tell you this. Who's he really beaten recently? Well, he slept Michael Johnson out cold. Slept Michael Johnson out cold with a punch. I'm telling you this right now. Alexander Hernandez gets fraud checked by Michael Johnson. That's a fact. Okay? And I know that Hernandez is a win over Danill Dariush and Ferreira lost by split decision. And Ferreira has a very close fight. Or he was actually in the middle of almost fraud checking Gamrot in a weird way. And then Gamrot kneed him to the rib from behind and it broke his lower rib and he lost the fight there. But I think Carlos Diego Ferreira, I mean, I hate to glaze him all the time. I think he's always a good pick. Now, against a certain level of comp like Grant Dawson, I'll pick Grant Dawson. You know what I mean? Like, when they're a legit prospect who's really good. Even then, I'm worried, though. Even then, I'm very worried. And I actually might have picked Carlos Diego Ferreira to win that one. Now I'm thinking back in hindsight. But Grant Dawson ended up beating him. But it's tricky. It's always really difficult for them to get past Carlos Diego Ferreira. It's very difficult to find a guy who's going to cruise right through him. And no one, I think, has done it really since Dustin Poirier, who knocked him out ages ago. I'm going to go with Diego Ferreira. Even against Rebecca comes out all guns blazing, trying to get him out of there. And I think Rebecca's would beat Alexander Hernandez's ass and finish him. Just giving an honest opinion here. So I think, Carlos Diego Ferreira weathered that storm against Rebecca, beat the piss out of him in the later rounds of that fight. And this is a Rebecca who's going tooth and nail with Matek Bekoroblai and winning as well. I thought he won it quite clearly. Of course, the hordes of NPC comments nowadays that we have to suffer as MMA fans from that community disagreed with the decision, but I thought it was very obvious. He dropped him and hurt him in the third round, nearly finished him. I know that he nearly got finished back, but he wasn't dropped like that whatsoever. So I think Carlos Diego Ferreira's resume has always been really underrated, and he beats the Alexander Hernandezes of the world. And the fact that they've given him this and made him an underdog, like, do you not know who this guy is? He eats up and spits out Alexander Hernandez's for breakfast in this division. You give him some lesser than guy, and listen, Hernandez is good, but when you look at the opponents that he dusts up, I never thought Chase Hooper had really improved in that way. I thought he's good at grappling, but he hasn't really got a way of getting it there, and his striking is fucking awful. Okay? So I knew Hernandez was going to beat Chase Hooper, but this ain't Mike Breeden. You know what I mean? This ain't these levels of opponents. This is Trinaldo, who you really didn't want anything to do with and kind of like picked to a 3-round decision loss against. Jim Miller had a really tough fight with you. These are vets that are decent at fighting that Hernandez always seems to like really struggle with. I think Carlos Diego Ferreira is a vet that's decent at fighting and then some. Like, he's a little better than the Jim Millers and the others of the division that have given problems to Hernandez when he's tried to step up before. So I'm going to go with Carlos Diego Ferreira getting this one done. Second or third round TKO finish. We move on. Santiago Luna versus Quang Lee. This is their guy, right? So they want Santiago Luna to be in the UFC. They want him to make a splash in his debut. He is pretty good. He's well-rounded. He's 6-0. They're not showing his record here, but he's 6-0. He's pretty decent. He hasn't really beaten anyone that crazily good, but I reckon I'm going to take him to beat Quang Lee. Quang Lee ended up beating Gaston Bolaños, rear naked choke, a pure striker, kickboxer. Gaston Bolaños, very slow as well. Santiago Luna's a bit more well-rounded. I can see him winning this one. So I'm going to go with him to win this in his debut. It's hard to tell. Fuck this one. We're going to Santiago Luna. Just deal with it. We move on. Kelvin Gastelum versus Dustin Stoltzfus. They've done Kelvin a favor here, in my opinion. He's so fucking fat, it's not loading in time. You know what I mean? That's the position we're in right now. Kelvin, dinner's ready. Oh, here he is. Kelvin's shown up. Oh, the build, dude. The build of Kelvin, it never ceases to amaze me. And you never really notice how just purely odd the build is until you notice him next to someone else. You know? Look how in proportion and normal this is. Kelvin's arms and legs on his torso is insane. But he's going to beat Dustin Stoltzfus. All due respect to Stoltzfus. I'm sure he's a cool dude. He's had some wins. He's had some wins. He's had a lot more losses, though. A lot more highlight reel losses as well, where he's been chinned. I think he did all right in moments against other opponents, even against Bruno Ferreira. I think he was doing all right, and then boom, he got hit with that spinning elbow. And he has moments where I'm like, hang on a second, Dustin can grapple a little bit. Hang on a second, Dustin's not awful on the feet. But he doesn't show any talent like Kelvin. And, you know, Kelvin against a Chris Curtis even. I thought he looked really good. And at middleweight, he can take a lot of technical ability up to that weight class and not get left behind like he is at welterweight when he does come up against a real good grappling aficionado like Sean Brady, who just completely ragdolls him and sets the standard on him. But at middleweight, Kelvin can get by. You know, he lost to Joe Pyfer in his last fight. I know that, Stoltzfus has a win over Pyfer technically, but it was an arm injury, if we're being honest. And Kelvin had moments against Pyfer. Listen, he got hurt in the first and second, but in the third round, he had some moments in that round and showed that he's still in it. You know, he's not ready to quit after being knocked down. I just don't think Stoltzfus can do anything to tame Gastelum here. He can't drop him. He can't KO him. I don't think he can ragdoll him or, wet blanket him. So you're going to have to deal with Kelvin and your Dustin Stoltzfus, and you are pretty shit. Just keeping it real. I'm going to have to go with Kelvin Gastelum getting this one done. Back against the wall. If he loses this one, he'll never get to do it again. He'll never get another chance in the UFC again. He should win this fight by TKO. If he's anywhere close to the Kelvin he once was, this is a free TKO win. Late in the first round, in the second round at some point. It's going to take some figuring out moments. Stoltzfus might get a takedown for a moment. Maybe both guys land some shots here and there. But once the fight starts easing in, and we see Stoltzfus take a few heavy breaths, and we see Stoltzfus start to sort of breathe in between moments, we're going to see Kelvin put the pressure on and get a TKO win in the middle part of this fight, I'd say. We move on. Rafa Garcia versus Jared Gordon. I'm going with Jared Gordon, the most underrated lightweight on the roster, arguably. He beat Nasrat Haqparast. I'm saying it all. He beat Nasrat Haqparast, okay? He was on his way to showing that Bobby Green can't fight moving forwards, and he was on his way to exposing him before Bobby Green went for the headbutt. The Paddy Pimblett fight is interesting, though, in terms of a decision. I'm joking. He beat Paddy Pimblett. We all watched it happen now. Yes, Paddy broke his foot in the first round, but broke his foot on Jared Gordon's titanium shins, buddy. Okay? Let's not forget about it. Let's not take away points from Jared Gordon just because his shins are too damn dense to be kicked with some soy shit that puts Michael Chandler away. This ain't no Michael Chandler. This Jared Gordon we're talking about. And he has been consecutively wronged in his career by decisions, and it hurts. He should be ranked right now. Lost to Grant Dawson, very clear. I think he got finished. He got choked out, right? Rear naked choke by Grant Dawson. But Grant Dawson's very good. People forget, man. Grant Dawson's very good. But I'm going to have to go with Jared Gordon here, man. He's way levels above Rafa Garcia, which is why he's a big favorite. I think he should be a bigger favorite. I mean, what are some of the other odds on this card? So they have Alessandro Costa, yeah, over Alden Coria, minus 500. They don't really know. They should know for this one, in my opinion. You know? Rafa Garcia, Jared Gordon. This one is where the odds should be a little bit wider. Normally, I'm not a favor of wide odds, but Rafa Garcia is not on the level of Jared Gordon. If Jared Gordon got fed up the corpse of Vince Piquel, decimation. He just came off a first-round KO over Thiago Moises, which is a good win. I know everyone gets it, but everyone has to get it at a certain point. You know the guys that got the win over Moises because they're all decent. And you have to be decent to even get the matchup in the first place. Rafa Garcia struggling with Vince Piquel. Struggling with... I didn't even blow out Clay Guida. You got to destroy Clay Guida at this point, man. Destroy Clay Guida at this point. Were you out there fucking taking him to a fucking 29-28 decision, you clown? Sorry. Jared Gordon should win this, though. I think his boxing is really underrated, and that's Rafa Garcia's strongest aspect of his game. I would say, is that he's kind of hard to hold down and he's got decent boxing. But Jared Gordon's got better boxing than him and he's got more power. Rafa Garcia has no power in his hands. So I'm going to go with Jared Gordon. I'm going to say Jared Gordon gets this one done by TKO in the first or second round. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say late second round, but there's going to be a beatdown first. I trust in Rafa Garcia's chin. There's going to be a bit of a one-sided beatdown. There may be a 10-8 round. You know what I mean? There might be a dominant finish to round 1, and then Garcia goes out there for round 2, gets his ass beaten and finish towards the end of round 2. So I'm going to go with Jared Gordon. I think he's one of the more underrated fighters on the roster. And even though Garcia is on a win streak, look at the wins. Don't just look at his UFC record. Look at the wins. Look how close some of the rounds are. Jared Gordon should eat this guy for breakfast. And I actually think minus 245 is disrespectful odds to Jared Gordon. So I'd put him as a 3-1. I think he wins this fight pretty convincingly. We move on. Up the card, Rob Font versus David Martinez. Is this the co-main? It is the co-main event. I don't know, man. I'm going to go Rob Font. But it's not that I'm not saying I don't know as to what the fuck am I seeing? I'm not saying I don't know as in I don't know who wins this fight. You've got to pick Rob Font. What the fuck has David Martinez done? You beat Simon Oliveira in your debut? Wow, dude. You beat Simon Oliveira? Oh, no way. You took a pretty shitty fighter to a decision on the Contender Series? Where you did a little bit more than him, but you took a lot of damage? Look at the odds I'm about to show you here. This is Rob Font. Problems for everyone, no matter what. You get past Rob Font, you're in a fight regardless. You know? Sorry he lost to Corey Sandhagen and was doing good against Aldo other than getting hurt in some moments. And who was the other guy? Against Marlon Vera, he was whooping his ass and got hurt in moments. And it was really bad. I don't think David Martinez has the ability to hurt Rob Font in that way. I don't think he has the ability to beat up on Rob Font. He's a single shot guy. And again, I hate to bring this into this, but he is a Mexican that is requiring and relying on, should I say, sorry. He's a Mexican that is relying on pure explosivity in order to win fights. There's not much volume from David Martinez. It's not like he puts the pressure on and starts wading forward and cutting off the cage. He's actually floating around the outside of the cage quite a bit. And he tries to chop at low kicks with the most power he possibly can, or go in with a 1-2 with the most power he possibly can, or throw a jab with a heavy amount of power, big right hand with a load of power, big body kick, anything like that. He goes in single moments of explosivity, and he's not that explosive, you know? So I reckon this is going to be a fight where Rob Font is just peppering him with a jab. We're going to see David Martinez grit down for a big jab, and Font just keeps it out there. Keeps the jab out there even more. He's got a lot of reach to work with here. I don't see David Martinez being able to out-grapple him. I think Font's got this one done. And it's on short notice for David Martinez as well. He was supposed to fight someone else on the card, and now you've dealt Rob Font, who was matched up against Raul Rosas Jr. So maybe there's a part of this where you could be like, Font's been focusing on grappling the whole time, and David Martinez is a decent striker because he beat, what was his name again? No one ranked, no one even close to being ranked, no one in the top 30 at bantamweight. Was he in the top 40? No one in the top 40. Maybe in the top 50 of bantamweight? No one in the top 50 of bantamweight. Maybe in the top 55? No, not quite there. No, literal bottom feeder Simon Oliveira and a guy on the Contender Series that was shit that he took to a decision. Why is he plus 110 against Rob Font? Seeing a lot of silly odds. And I've been getting them. A lot of silly odds we've been having in this sport recently. And I'm all in favor. You know, because I've been getting a lot of underdogs right. They had a Mavov as an underdog against Baralho. When are we going to learn? Stop chucking him up 5 levels too high. Rob Font is going to beat David Martinez, I reckon. Even though his last fight with Gene Matsumoto was close, Matsumoto at least proved something in the division. He had wins in the division. But yeah, I'm going to go Rob Font. Decision win. 29-28 based on the second and third, or maybe 30-27. In fact, probably 30-27. David Martinez, if you watch his fight, I'm going to give you a heads up. He has this look on his face the entire time. He's furious. If he's getting peppered by jabs, he's going to lose all composure and get beaten up. So I'm going to go 30-27, maybe even a 30-26 in favor of Rob Font over David Martinez. We move on. Diego Lopes versus Gene Silva. They've made Diego Lopes a minus 238 favorite here. I don't know if that's because I don't know if that's because of the recent Fighting Nerds losses. It might be, because I feel like these odds were a little bit closer before. But I'm switching. You guys know what happens when I switch, by the way. I'm always wrong. But this time, I'm going to be right. Okay? My initial vibe on this was that Diego Lopes was going to win. Over time, over brainwashing, over chat interactions, over a live chat harassing me about it. Okay, maybe Gene Silva does beat him then. But you know what? No. Too much. Too soon. We've learned this lesson before. The Fighting Nerds mystique has vanished from my brain. Normally I was thinking these guys are just too fluid. They're just too good. They'll beat anyone they put him against. Prates gets just fucking schooled by Ian Gary for the first 3 rounds of that fight. You know, you see Caio Braujo. Imavov fight, you know, he just didn't do enough and he kind of let it get away from him. And my point is, even with Huffy against Benoit Saint-Denis, and now it's Gene Silva's turn. And he's going higher up than the rest of them. Now, to be fair to Gene Silva, Bryce Mitchell was his ranked test, right? Which is a test for him. You know, that is a big fight for him. But it's a little bit more approachable than some of the other Fighting Nerds got when it comes to Ian Gary or, you know, Benoit Saint-Denis for Huffy when he'd only beaten Bobby Green. So you know what? I like Gene Silva, but I've kind of lost a bit of the Fighting Nerds hype. They're just fighters, you know? They're just like every other fighter. And you can look really good in style on low-level opponents. Then certain fighters just know how not to get chinned in the first round against you when you're doing all the high-five shit. And I think Diego Lopes is one of those guys. I just can't see Diego Lopes getting chinned early here. I don't see it at all. And he's had championship experience now. He's gone 5 rounds with Volkanovski. And even though he lost to Volk, round 4 was pretty competitive. Round 2, he dropped Volkanovski and found that shot on him. I think Volk is way more elusive than Gene Silva on the back foot. And it really comes down to this. There are levels to this game. And we are chucking the Fighting Nerds up so many levels at once. And it's backfiring. It doesn't matter how good you look against a certain caliber opponent. If someone above that is a better caliber of opponent, the difference between a couple ranking spots could be a first round humiliation finish of Gene Silva getting a humiliating KO over someone versus someone taking him 5 rounds and giving him a lot of problems. It always happens in MMA. So I'm going to go with Diego Lopes getting this one done. And I'm going to say he gets this one done by 2nd round finish over Gene Silva. Little big compared to Bryce Mitchell when it comes up against Gene Silva. And remember, this needs to be mentioned. I know I was Team Bryce the whole build-up of the Gene Silva fight. And a lot of people got on to me about being biased. But one thing I said, which is true, Bryce was doing pretty fucking good on the feet in round 1. And I know a lot of people aren't going to like to hear that. Go back and rewatch the first 3 minutes of round 1. I know Gene was laughing at him. And Gene was mocking it and tapping his leg afterwards. But he couldn't find range for about 3 minutes in that fight. And Bryce was picking at him a lot. And Diego Lopes is a lot more dangerous to get picked at by than Bryce Mitchell when it comes to him being able to consistently land shots on you. I don't see this going well for Gene Silva. He's not going to try and take down Diego Lopes and wear him out against a cage and get him into grappling exchanges to where Lopes can gas out and lose a bit of steam and momentum. This guy took Evloev to a very close split decision on short notice in his debut. I'm just putting things together here that I can say about Diego Lopes that I can't say about Gene Silva. You beat Melsik Bagdasaryan. In hindsight, you took Drew Dober to round 2 on the stall. Dust him up early. It's Drew Dober at that point. Like, if you're really that level. Manuel Torres did it way earlier. A lot of fighters have put away Drew Dober a bit earlier. I just feel like, Diego Lopes. Not a lot of fighters have put away Drew Dober way earlier, by the way. But what I'm saying is that Diego Lopes is a lot more proven. And he's a lot better. And one thing I like about Diego here when it comes to the technicality of the matchup, forget about the Fighting Nerd shit and rankings and where they've matched up against other opponents. Let's talk about the matchup itself. I like this for Diego Lopes because he crashes very well. And it's one thing that I said about why he would do well against Ilia Topuria. Even though you can say logically, you know, Ilia would beat Diego Lopes and no one's going to disagree with you at this point. At featherweight, I was very interested by it because a lot of fighters are on the back foot and they're scared of getting hit. and they're timid, and they're not really committing to shots the same way, and they're really trying to point, fight, and break an opponent down with that. And when you're going into a Gene Silva fight by doing that, tit for tat, tappy, stay alive, work this guy out, he starts getting really confident because he doesn't fear the power coming back his way, because he knows, and this has happened in his last few fights against Melsik Bagdasaryan, Bryce Mitchell, he knows that he's in there with someone who's really not trying to chin him. You know, they're not trying to flatline KO him. And once he loses that fear where he's like, this guy ain't going to chin me, I can just sort of get away with whatever, he starts getting loose, wheel kicks, all sorts like that. Against Diego Lopes, when Gene Silva crashes in, this guy might shoot in, get to the body lock, get round to the back ASAP. Gene Silva comes in and closes the distance on Diego Lopes. You might get hit with a 2-punch combo that's going to take your fucking head off. And I think when a couple of those exchanges happen, we're going to see a different Gene Silva that's not all happy-go-lucky and goofy, and all of a sudden you're in there with a top 5 guy in the UFC featherweight division, and it's not so fucking easy. So I'm going to go with Diego Lopes. He's a big favorite here. I don't think he should be as big of a favorite. I think the recent Fighting Nerds losses has been a problem for that. But, I mean, who's got better grappling, Diego Lopes or Gene Silva? Gene Silva's been able to stuff some takedowns against fighters and caught Bryce in a nasty guillotine. That's really impressive of him. Overall, Diego Lopes has shown superior grappling to Gene Silva. Stand-up wise, Diego was knocking people the fuck out left and right coming up as well. You know? And he's been tested. And he's been 5 rounds with Volk, and he went 3 rounds with Dan Ige on short notice, and Ige stepped in on a day's notice, and it was a weird environment. He's been in these spotlight positions. He's had time to learn from them. I reckon he's not going to overthink things here. I think he's going to be Diego Lopes, and I think that's going to make Gene Silva not himself. Not able to just happy-go-lucky float around against Diego. That's not happening against Diego Lopes. I don't know what you guys are going to say. When Gene Silva wins, it comes from him being all loose and getting all, you know, vibrant against Kevin Vallejos on the Contender Series, who Gene Silva ended up going to somewhat of a competitive decision with, even though it was arguably 2-1, could even still be 3-0 Gene Silva. All of a sudden, that stopped. When he was hitting Kevin Vallejos with stuff, and Vallejos started landing back some decent ones, the goofiness, the dancing, it kind of stopped. All of a sudden, things become competitive. All of a sudden, things become an MMA fight, where there's no aura over someone or physical presence in the cage over someone. Diego Lopes, I think, is going to shut this shit right up. So I'm going to go with Diego Lopes. And I'm going to say Diego Lopes finishes him in round 2. And also for Gene Silva, and this is the last thing I'll include, because I've spoke a lot about the Fighting Nerds and how it relates to this. They've all just lost. There was a time not long ago when Gene Silva was on the come up, and it was Prates knocking people out left and right, and Baraujo going through the division. No one really cared about Baraujo until the other Fighting Nerds came along, but it's all good, Baraujo. You had a decent fight with Mavov, I guess. And then there's Huffy coming up as well, and the whole team's killing it. The buzz of the gym, the vibe of the gym. They just had a guy lose on tough. Huffy just got really badly beaten. Carlos Prates lost to Ian Gary. Has since bounced back since then to beat Jeff Neal. Very impressive win, don't get me wrong. Baraujo just lost as well. If there was ever... And I saw videos of Gene Silva crying backstage. He's up now. He's up now, and he's just watched basically his whole team get fraud checked over the past however many months it's been. I don't like that for Gene Silva. So I'm going to go with Diego Lopes getting this one done. I think you'll catch Silva coming in and put some proper mustard on him. This is going to be a proper fight. And I think Lopes has got more experience with that so far. So he'll thrive in that position. Whereas Silva might come undone. So I'm going to go Diego Lopes. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.